Oh.
Okay, it just started. I found the button. Yay. There you go. We're good. Go ahead.
Should I start over? We're good.
Wait, yeah, whatever. Go ahead. Still do that little part again. Just really take two.
Just that little part again?
Yeah.
So I was a police officer for almost 11 years, and during that time I was both what you would see as your typical uniformed police officer, but I also quickly moved into a specialized unit, I guess you'd call them. So that would be working gangs and narcotics and violent crime and detectives and all that kind of stuff, good stuff, all that kind of fun stuff.
Okay.
And went into a specialized division where I would, sorry, I'm trying to do my bank card at the same time here and get a pass for the thing, so bear with me. So that was
cash flow. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that involved a lot of training. So I was sent into different cities, different counties, different, work with some federal agencies, state agencies, but pretty much all over the state of where I was. And got training in many different specialties, but mostly what I worked was gangs, drugs, and violent crime. That was my forte, and I did a lot of undercover stuff where I played, different characters for different task forces and things like that. So there you go.
All right.
So
all right. I'm muting people because I have it set where people are coming in unmuted. So I am going through making sure they're muted so we don't get like background noise. All right, go ahead now. So you were saying gangs, drugs, etc.
Yeah, so gangs, drugs, like that, and then at the end of my career, I was both hurt. I'm not going to go into the details of that just for safety reasons.
Injured on the job.
Injured, severely injured, required multiple spinal surgeries, and then I'm trying to press these buttons at the same time. And then at the same time, I was, I guess you'd call a whistleblower. So I was leading a union and whistleblowing on some things that I had to for my job as union president, and also because there were things that morally I couldn't turn a blind eye to. So it's kind of all happening at once for me. So my career ended in a very bad way, and I can't get into all the details because of safety reasons. But they didn't like a lot of things I had to say, and so I became what I guess you could call targeted individual some way. Or people have heard about that. Or
targeted, exactly.
Yeah, targeted. They like to let you know, who's boss, and they'll be around and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, what I wanted to go into on that, so you were 11 years on the force, right? What did you ever? Were you a detective or no?
Yes. It was
so detective is good. That's a gold shield.
Well, yeah.
But that's only in New York. It's a detective. They do that.
Yeah. I was a detective, and I was a corporal, field training officer. I was a canine officer, lots of different things. So, yeah. Hello?
Yep, I'm here. Did we lose you?
Okay. No.
Not there. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I was talking about the detective and the gold shield and whatnot. So
yeah.
What did you say? Yeah. All right. So, but what I was asking you is, your training in child abuse cases. Okay. What kind of training did you have? Because I wanted to bring it there because that has been your forte while working with George. And George always wants to push away from that, and I always found that odd. So. I think a lot of people were disturbed by that as well, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that you have to look at it. I mean, this is the way I try to look at it anyway. Is that so? When you're a female police officer, it's a rarity, right? I mean, it's not like it's much more common today than it was. I was in the 90s and 2000s,
right?
So or late 90s all the way through the 2000s, and in my area, it was rare. So I was the only one, really for quite some time.
So you're the only female cop.
Yeah,
okay.
so which has its, greatness and its challenges and all that kind of stuff. But when you're dealing with children or especially child, sex abuse cases and stuff, a lot of times most of the times the perpetrators are males. That's just the truth. And people might not want to hear that, but that's the truth.
No, of course it is. I mean, they're just freaking pervs, but okay.
Right. Well, not all of them, but, that's just it. So, when
the
you have
perpetrators are, no, I'm not saying all men are pervs. I'm saying all of these perpetrators are. Actually, so you're saying someone not pervs, but I guess you're driving that into the whole satanic conscious maneuver. But let's, we could develop that later on another call. So
I'm just saying, I'm just saying that most perpetrators of, sorry, I'm trying to talk on the phone sometimes, so this guy's helping me out. Most perpetrators are men, 90-something% of them. So when you get a child that's been abused, they're oftentimes been abused by male. Just one card.
Right.
That's fine.
So presumably it's better to have a female come and talk to a kid, and it's more of a mother figure, and it's a female, and it's not like the same animal that just attacked them, right? So it's less traumatizing.
Right.
Okay.
So, and on top of it, I had training. When you go into like detective school, or you get sent to all these different schools. So, you're in the police academy for 8 months, and you're trained to do your basic investigations. And then when you go into detective school, you're sent all over different agencies and different schools where you get specialization, right? And so some of that training I had, was in homicide and violent crimes and sexual crimes and things like that. So I had that training on top of it, and I was a female officer, and I worked the streets. So they would oftentimes call me in to interview the children in these kind of cases.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So what age kids are we talking about here that have been abused? What are we talking? And first of all, how many cases in your career did you deal with children sex abuse stuff? 10, 20, 50, 100?
I say over 50, and I couldn't even get a number on it because it's so convoluted in the different ways, so it could be just a straight out case like that regarding sexual abuse, or it could be it's involving, dope dealers and sexual abuse. So it's kind of convoluted, but multiple times. With children, I've dealt with children of all ages, from babies to you can't interview, right? You can't interview children that are under 2 years of age, or even 2-year-olds, really. But all the way up to, young teenagers and, significant interviews with 6, 7, 8-year-olds, things like that.
Right. Yeah. Now, in these scenes, I mean, you had told me, and are you comfortable on this call? We good? We good?
Yeah.
This is you and me talking. So we'll keep the language. We'll chuckle and keep the language clean, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you had told me that you had, visited these kids in the hospital where you had, where they were damaged and severely injured. Tell us, how's that go? I mean, so you've seen. I'm trying to establish the credibility of your knowledge in this whole field.
Yeah.
So what components have you seen? You've done the hospital, you've done the court, you've interviewed the victims.
Yeah.
So tell us a little about that, would you?
So I was, with a case like that, I'll just give you a for example case. So this would not be, because I don't want to tell about any of my specific cases, but I'll tell you a for example case that will kind of encompass maybe the worst case scenario. Okay. So I would be called in, and they would say, Officer Smith was sent out to this call, and there's an allegation that this child was sexually assaulted or raped or has been involved in a sexual abuse, something like that, right? So they would call me in and say, most police departments have something called a soft room, and that soft room is oftentimes it has really small furniture and stuffed animals and toys and stuff like that. And
like a playroom for a kid.
Yeah, like a little playroom for a kid, and then it's got the officer's chair is kind of smaller, and it's made to do an interview with a kid. And then you have things like anatomically correct dolls or pictures, things like that. So so you can do interviews with children, whether it's physical or emotional, sexual, whatever, and be able to have them use whatever they choose to use to tell the story. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Some of them are pre-verbal, or some of them are fairly verbal. Some of them just can't talk about it and can maybe show you.
Right.
So I had that kind of training, and so I would be called in, and they'd say, let me give a name, Julie, right? Little Julie, 7 years old, is in this room, and the officer brought her here, and she needs to be interviewed about what has happened to her. So
and you would go and do we don't need to go through the whole process of the interview.
I'm not going to go through the whole process.
Just talking about the real life experience you had, and I think you had told me that because you were a female, they would bring you on a case even if it really wasn't your case. They would say, here's a case, go talk to the kid. So it'd be somebody else's case, and you'd have to go and interview the kid and get them to, share the facts.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about hospital rooms and serious physical injuries as a result of these? Did you see them too?
Yeah. So the hospitals oftentimes have a small, what do I call it? It's a patient room, but it has, if you can imagine what a large, I'm trying to be careful how I say these words, but if you can imagine what a large hospital room would be like for, let's say, if you were going to examine somebody for a rape, right? What you would need to do that examination. So if you need those kind of instruments, but you shrink them down to the size of a 6-year-old, that's what I would see.
Okay, the kids are being examined. I see.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
So I would be called in on, I was called in on rape cases too, where I would be with the female while she was being examined. So it just depends on what's going on. But if you can imagine shrinking that down, that's all I'll say about that.
So you would have adult sexual assault cases as well as child sexual assault cases?
Oh, yeah, many. Yeah.
Okay. That's what I'm saying. All right. Now, then you also have training as a psychologist, right? Tell us about that. What kind of a degree
I have a master's degree in clinical psychology.
Right, and I know George has said, and you've told me, that you really specialize in PTSD, which stands for post-traumatic stress syndrome or disorder.
I have a specialty kind of training or what do you call a model of therapy that specializes in PTSD.
Excellent. All right. Now, let's see, where else do we want to go with this thing here? And so that's the background on this. And you've done a lot of research on this whole thing. And, I mean, what's your thinking? We'll just hit it on a broad scale, I guess, about the use of this whole pedophilia thing. What's your read on this that's being publicized, where they talk about the Pizzagate, where they talk about, a worldwide pedophilia ring. What's your read on that?
My read on it is that it is true. It is what's happening. Okay. And that doesn't come from just because I've read something. I mean, I saw this, some of this is the police officer course, and then I saw some of it in the psychology profession. And then for reasons I can't get into, I kind of got I call it like a peek behind the curtain in many different aspects. And because of that, and I also was I've shared with you, and I'll share at some point, in contact with this Nazi survivor. And because of that, I was able to put these two worlds together and really come to a kind of a grand understanding of what was going on, what had happened, what MK Ultra was about, why our country is saturated right now, is that our world is actually. And kind of
Did you just say what MK Ultra is all about?
Yeah.
You kind of like blurred on that. I wanted to make sure we were clear so my high, squeaky voice could articulate that for the recording session.
Okay.
Right. So that's what MK Ultra is about. So what are you saying? Bottom line, what's MK Ultra? It involves this?
Yes. So
go ahead.
I would
continue.
I would say for this first interview, I would say there's like kind of 3 different categories of what's going on right now. You've got this kind of societal problem where we've let whether it's sex offenders or pedophilia or whatever, where we've blurred the edges, right? You've got kind of this part of the community that says, oh, this really isn't a crime, or it's really not this bad. It's actually a mental health disorder. There's some people that want to kind of put it in that. And then you've got some other people that go, oh, no, it's actually just love, you know, it's all, you know, this kind of stuff. So they've kind of twisted the morals and the ethics around it, right? And that's intentional.
Right, so wait. Some people are saying, oh, no, it's just love. Other people, what's the other one? So what are the three levels you've got here? How demented.
So you get people that say this.
Listen, Task Force, don't sugarcoat it. Tell it straight up. What's the deal? I mean, what do you got the different levels? You got the standard perv who just like screwing kids, right?
Right.
And gets off on that. Then you got the wackadoos who are doing this in order to what?
I would say this is the three levels.
Children.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's talk. The three levels are your standard perv, right? Your standard guy that this is what he wants, enjoys, right? With kids. Right. And then you've got what I would call the blackmail division, right? So these
the blackmail division, you're calling it?
Yeah,
blackmail
people
division?
that are blackmailed. And then, so they can fit into the perv category as well because they've been blackmailed. They chose that. But oftentimes, what happens is, whether it's your congressman or senator or anybody, businessmen, lots of different people, they have this kind of thing they do. I wouldn't say they would be intelligence agencies or maybe even federal law enforcement agencies or maybe even state law enforcement agencies. What they like to do to control you is, you know, they do setups. And so what they would do is say, hey, Joe Blow citizen or Joe Blow businessman or Joe Blow congressman, right, who's normally pretty clean as a whistle, just your average guy or whatever. Why don't you come to this party? You're going to meet a bunch of high-level
Stop
players,
you. Let me stop you. Hold on.
Okay.
Stop a second. There's a voice going on in the background. Are you sitting next to somebody having a chat, or is that like across the room?
No. I'm on a train. They can't.
Yeah, okay, but I'm hearing that. It's like somebody's sitting right next to you.
No, they're not. No one's talking the whole train.
I don't know how it'll come off on the recording. Okay, go ahead. All right, so you were saying, so we got Joe Blow businessman, Joe Blow citizen, or Joe Blow congressman?
Joe Blow congressman, right? And they say, hey, come over to the party, and, you know, you're going to meet these, whatever, lobbyists, whoever, right? Make some deals. And so they go over, and what they do is it's called pedophile entrapment. And so what they do is they will start the party and get it going and get the drinks flowing and, you know, that kind of stuff. And they might even invite, you know, like young models, not kids, but, you know, beautiful women over, whatever, right?
Sure.
And then, or they might
not. And they could be underage. They could be 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, or all of the above.
It could be, but, you know, a lot of it will be over, you know, it starts out is it's overage and, you know, it's just a party. And then they'll groupie people or give them some sort of drugs that they're not unaware of. And they pass out, go unconscious. And then the blackmailers will bring in young children. And they will, I don't want to go into detail, except they will set the stage, basically, right?
Right.
And
where you got some kids laying on them or whatever, right?
So whatever.
While the dude is unconscious and, or something along those,
Right, so they
and then take pictures or run video or all of the above.
Take pictures or run video, whatever. And then the guy, you know, when he wakes up or they give him, you know, an antidote, whatever, they say, hey, look at this. Right?
Yeah.
So
surprise,
the guy,
surprise. Look at what you were doing. Yeah.
Right. So the guy that's, you know, some your normal guy or your father or whatever, he's like, oh, my God, right? But now he's forever, he feels like he can't get out of it, right? So he's trapped forever. And they say, every time they say, you want to vote on this, or you don't want to do this, or, you know, whatever, they say they'll remind him by slipping him a picture and they'll say, hey, remember this?
Yeah. So they're blackmail.
You might want, right. So that's the...
Yeah, but there's another layer to that. Hang on a second.
Yes,
but hang on. There's a layer right in there. So if the person, the victim, and it could be a woman too, woman could be taking a picture of like with an animal doing something ridiculous. Oh, look at this picture. You and the donkey, or you and the dog, or some crazy thing. And the woman is like mortified. And then now if the person says, well, I'm going to report this. This is a setup, etc. What do they tell them then?
Well,
they'll say, no, if you do that, we'll kill you, or we'll kill your family, or we'll kill everybody you know. So you're not going to tell anybody, and we're going to reserve the right to expose you to whoever your work colleagues are or whoever you are. your constituents are. Is that an accurate characterization of what's going on?
It's accurate.
Right.
And even if they do report it, like let's say they go report it to some federal law enforcement, a lot of times they're either in on it or they're blackmailed themselves or whatever. So it never, it's always going to come back on that person who's reporting it. So they keep their mouth shut.
Wonderful. Yeah. Wow.
They can't get out. You're trapped.
You're trapped. Exactly.
Right.
In a terrible bind.
So.
And is there any upside to the people? Are they saying, but if you play nice, we'll reward you and give you money and participate in these illegal deals? So there's an upside, too. It's not just straight crush them.
If you want to consider upside, yeah. Yeah, so there's an upside, which is, you take, you get, bribes or whatever, take money and stuff. And, and that's, then you just wrapped in corruption at that point. It's like, you can't get out. Mm-hmm. You can't, say anything. You can't you can't like really turn down the even the bribe sometimes because that can be dangerous. They think you're going to talk. It's a lot of just blackmail is not fun. Bottom line.
No.
So.
All right. Well, so that's that. So your belief is that this whole international thing is being used in that format, right? Is that is that a fair characterization? Right.
That's part
of it.
What else? There's a final level, that I believe.
Well, what's the other level?
I know. The final level is after World War II.
Right.
A lot of people know about Operation Paperclip. I'm not going to go into all the details of that, but a lot of people want to believe we killed the Nazis and we were victorious, and that's just simply not true. We actually helped the Nazis escape, the worst of the worst, through Operation Paperclip and up through South America and Argentina, and a lot into the United States, a lot into Canada, and gave them new identities. And so what they were doing over in Nazi Germany in these camps and hospitals, which was torture and a lot of mind control stuff and human experimentation, they just came into our country, into Canada, under the guise of the CIA, which is Catholics in Action, and was just basically
what is it in action? Catholics in Action?
Catholics in Action is what the CIA stands for, yeah. And it's because the Vatican was part of it. A lot of people don't want to know this.
I always thought it was the Central Intelligence Agency.
Well, that's what they call it now, but originally it was Catholics in Action.
I thought it was OSS before that.
Yeah. Well, OSS and then CIA was Catholics in Action, and they went into Central Intelligence Agency. But anyway, I'm not going to get into all the backings of that, except that they came in and they still were doing the human experimentation, and that was proven out even in, I think, 1973 in the Church Committee. You had these girls or, young girls come out and talk about being through this MKUltra program where they were tortured and, sexually assaulted, sexually abused and stuff to create mind control. Stuff like that.
Like what we were talking about, where they got a personality, where it's just such a brutal, violent, crazy thing that their mind tunes out. And what is the age frame that has to happen in to work effectively?
Well, what they did was, and I learned this, from my friend that was an Nazi also through studying.
Sorry,
what they did was
could you repeat?
Yeah. I learned this through the friend of mine that was a Nazi, or her father was. 1 second.
Oh, from a Nazi, you were saying. I didn't understand you.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So I learned kind of connection through that, and also through my own studying in psychology and from stuff I knew as a law enforcement officer. I was able to put it all together. And so what they were doing is, I don't want to go into all history, but basically, after World War I, you had in Vienna, France, you had both Hitler and Stalin and Mussolini and Sigmund Freud and all these guys there together. And, you started to see the first soldiers come back after World War I, where you see what they called back then shell shock, right? Or, whatever name they gave it. It's PTSD now.
Right, which is PTSD.
Right. And these soldiers were coming back and they weren't injured, but they, the war was over and you expect they're, 19, 20 years old, they'd be skipping on into, town saying, thank God I lived, right? And they didn't. they were oftentimes displaying these kind of severe mental problems. But that's what they described them as. They would even display like catatonia symptoms, such as laying down still for long periods of time, or having their arms stuck out for long periods of time, and just weird stuff, right? And having nightmares and all this kind of stuff. Well, at that time, they considered that a weakness of character, right? So they thought, oh, something's wrong with them. And a lot of those guys killed themselves or were killed because they considered them weak of character. And what was actually happening was it was PTSD, but no one understood it, right? So I call it a soul injury. They had just experienced so much trauma, so much death, that even though they might have came back with all their legs and arms and stuff, their souls were injured, right? So they were as injured as the people who came back with one leg, you know. They just didn't show it on the outside, and so a lot of people said, well, you look healthy. What's wrong with you? Get off your ass and go to work, you know, or why are you so depressed, or why are you having nightmares, right? That's the way they were treated. So Freud in all of his splendor, and he's a pedophile, you know, crazed human being, psychotic man, but he was the first kind of like quote-unquote psychologist who was studying the mind, the brain, right, trying to open up the brain, the mind, and understand it. And he looked at these guys, and his thought was, well, if, you know, we basically have a broken human, right? The man is broken here. And so if we want to create like super soldiers almost, or we want to find out what is the level it takes to break a man and how can we train against that, what we need to do is to actually break a man, right? So we need to create a laboratory and they already had labs from World War II, but we need to expand on that and start doing these horrible things to people and figure out what's their breaking point. Does that make sense? So how much trauma can we inflict on a human being, and at what point will they break? And if we can learn that, then we can kind of create an antidote against it, if that makes sense. We can train against it. You following me? Are you there? Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
hello.
I can hear you now. Hello. Did you hear me?
I'm here. You're on a roll, yes.
Okay. All right. So did you get the antidote part?
Yeah, we got all of it. I'm getting like stupid on my end. You're good.
Okay.
I'm just making sure I didn't screw myself up because I had to log back in to get access here. It's too weird.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just don't want an echo where I'm talking twice.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
but my question, wait. My question was, this started from like Freud's brain, his demented thinking of how do they break people and how much trauma do they inflict to do it, right? Now, what was the purpose in breaking them, and how would they know when they did? Would they use that for, this is really the basis of MK Ultra, correct?
Right, correct.
And what does that do? That gave them control, and they would program these people? What's the deal on that? And you were just saying that they wanted to create the antidote. Right? Yeah,
so they want to create kind of like the super soldier, right? Like the person that can't be broken, right? So if in war you realize that your troops can be broken, not just physically when they're shot, but internally, emotionally, or subconsciously somehow, right? Like these guys were. They're useless to you, right? So if you could create something, or you can build against it, or train against it, like we kind of, you think about the SEALs, how we train the SEALs, right? So you want to train them not just physically, but you want to train them mentally to go through things they think they could never have gone through, because that gives them the strength to know they can do it, right? So that's kind of an antidote against failure.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
So, but Freud was a sicko. And he, so he had that in mind.
You almost slipped there. There was almost an R rating on that, wasn't there? Go ahead. He was a sick what? Okay, go ahead. I'm teasing.
He was a sicko. So
right. I got it. What is that sound? Is that you? What just happened? Are you there? We lost audio. Did you hit Task force. All right, can you guys hear me? Okay. All right. So where? Okay, I got you. You can hear me. So where the hell did task force go? Let me guess. Her friggin' phone died. Let me see. Let me text her. Unbelievable. Well, that was good. I'll do her a quick text. I'm going to just say we lost audio. All right. I guess that could be a good starting. I'm going to just say we lost your audio. Hello. Okay. All right. And let me jump back to this. All right. Okay. Well, I guess what we can do is, I guess we can call it here. And I have to figure out how to stop the recording. Where do we do that? Man, this is so weird. All right. I just sent her a text. Hopefully she'll call back in. And, man, how do we stop this? I don't know. But I'll tell you what, campers, we're good. And I'm going to figure out how to stop the recording, which I think is a pause button. There's a pause here, but that just puts it on hold. So I think what we'll do is we'll just end the recording, and we'll call it a day. All right, well, listen, thank you very much, and we'll see if this thing worked, and good stuff, and I'll put a link up later.
Jenny.
I'm seeing here.
Oh,
you're back. Yes, dear. Where'd you go?
I'm in a train, so, you know.
Why don't you just, like, sit down and have, like, an interview and lecture us? My God. Man, that's like a Led Zeppelin song. You can't move and you can't stand still. But you are sitting down in the train.
Yeah, but it goes through tunnels, so, you know.
All right. Okay, well, I'm glad you made it back. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to end this call, and we're going to call it. But we'll schedule it again, and I'll talk to you later, all right? What happened? Okay. You just lost the signal? You were moving through the train and you just lost it?
So,
man. All right, well, I'm glad you made it back.
What are your people saying? Are they saying, oh, my God, too much? I want to know.
No, I don't know. Oh, here. Okay. Boyd just says, damn, she was on a roll. Okay. Oh. No, you were on a roll. All right, so you want to finish. Go ahead. We've got good audio. Keep going.
Okay.
Kick some butt, baby. You were talking about sicko mind breaking.
Yeah.
Boyd, go ahead.
So as they were expanding their I'll call them laboratories.
Right.
Over in England, they came from Germany, and then they were here in the United States and Canada, and they are still here. But anyway, they were in these kind of secret facilities. They were seeing what we now.
Oh man! Now you're wavering in and out.
Yeah, basically all of it is when the brain, the body experiences too much trauma, whether it's pain or emotional pain, whatever you want to call it, the brain will dissociate. And all that means it's not a sickness. It just means it's a way for the brain to protect itself, right? Kind of like when you're shivering or you're cold and you're in a cold environment, your body temperature will lower, but it does everything it can to keep you stable, right? So it might shut down certain parts of your system to save your heart, right?
Right. And this is you broke up when you said it before. You were talking, this is dissociative, DID, dissociative identity disorder. What a lot of people call it schizophrenia, where they have a separate kind of a personality. And it's not schizophrenia. It's dissociative. And they create this intentionally, is what you're saying. It's like a second component inside of somebody's head.
So a lot of people who are listening remember the movie Sybil, right? It was called multiple personality disorder, and that's what it was called for most of psychiatric history. And only in the past, I don't know, maybe less than 10 years, And it's changed, and that diagnosis has gone away and has moved in something called DID, which is dissociative identity disorder. Because they've learned that MPD, or this multiple personality disorder, which, you know, people probably watch on TV or seen in different films, is actually not someone switching into a full personality. What it is it's a dissociation due to trauma. Okay?
Right.
So if you can take that
and these are, hold on. These are the MK Ultra people, right?
Yes.
Or is it layers of that, too, where they're, like, super severe? Where you got somebody who goes, he's a shooter, and then he turns off, and then it's like, oh, I don't remember what I did. Is that reasonable or what?
Right. Yeah. So what Freud and those guys did was they saw this dissociation in children under the age of 5, and especially under the age of 3, dissociate much easier to do, and there are a variety of reasons for that. But number one, they're just children, right? So their brains aren't fully developed. And two, they don't have the capacity to understand their world or trauma or pain, you know, that kind of stuff.
Right, because they're little children.
They're little tiny kids. So they dissociate much more quickly to protect themselves, right? To not die. That's why you dissociate. And so you get a guy like Floyd, who was a child rapist, and his buddies, and they're seeing this behavior occur in their little victims, right? So they don't look at it and go, oh, wow, we should maybe stop doing what we're doing. This is causing problems, right? They look at it and go, oh, how can we use this to our benefit, right? So they do, and at the time there was a lot of studying going on about language and realizing that if you take a child under the age of like 5 or 6 and put them in multiple languages, they learn much faster, right? I mean, they can learn 5 or 6 languages and keep it, they can be fluent all the way until they're adults, but you really can't do that with adults. They were learning a lot about brain studies, how the brain learns at that time. So this is all kind of going on, and the way that Freud and OSS, CIA, MI6, DSSBDI, different agencies looked at it was, hey, if we could get a kid and we could create these kind of different identities in them, right, or different balls and moths, we can create kind of a super soldier almost, right? So you could train them and you could split them off and then program them. And so they started doing testing like that, right? And then...
Oh, man, did we lose you again? Let me see here. What the hell's going on? No. Crazy. Yeah, that's not cool. All right, you know what? I don't know if she can hear me, Jenny. Are you still there? Task Force, codename Jenny. Come back. I'm having a tough time logging in on this stupid thing. All right, campers. Yeah. All right, you know what? This is interesting. And I got a text in, and I see Boyd understands this, and Diane Purdy just sent a text in and said to tell her that many of the viewers understand this and our listeners. And that's great, and it's very true. And I just wanted to basically start from that level, all right? And I think there are a lot of people who don't know this. So let me ask you here, without unmuting everybody, you can go in the chat box. Do you think this would be helpful for, the general campgrounds? Yes or no? I'll put that. I'll say, would this be helpful? Be helpful. Oops, it's helping me write that. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yep. Diane just came back on a text. Yeah. Right. Yeah, thank you. I agree. We're going to have to talk to her about that. It's like, yeah, sit your ass down in a good spot without background bullshit, and let's have a good chat. But I think she has to be careful about what she says, and we got her on a roll there, which is important stuff. And look, she's just getting used to doing this, because if you'd seen her and George, then the question is why, he would always cut her off and just say, give me a soundbite in 5 seconds rather than let her talk the whole story. I see a comment from A. Taylor. I don't know. Yeah. I just got a message from Task Force. It says, in some tunnels, tell your campers we can chat again. Was that okay? Yes, I'll tell her. And they liked it. Okay. And it will be helpful. All right, so all y'all, if you think, where's this thing? I got to get this screen up. This is so weird working this off of the phone. Yeah, she responded. I said, yes, helpful. She said, good. Okay. Yep. Okay. All right, guys, so you think this is good stuff? Should we put this out for the campers or what? Yes, no. And will the campers like it? Yes, no. So it's really one question. It's either a yes or a no. Boyd gives me a thumbs up. Anybody else? Well, I guess you can if you're just in on the phone. So if you're on the screen, that's it. All right, what we'll do, we got a yes there from AI. Good. All right. And Diane texted in. She said a yes. Greg's a thumbs up. All right. Yeah. I don't see anybody saying no. So, excellent. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much. I can't even figure out on this stupid thing. There should be a button where you stop the recording, right? I don't know where the hell that is. I got the video button. We don't want to do that. Look at. I just hit the hold button. And I got to figure out how to turn it off. Group mute. No. All right. Well, you know what? I'm just going to end the call. And we thank you all for checking in. And that is great. So we're going to end the conference. And I'll get a link and I'll put this up later and I'll chat about it in the next video. In the meantime, on Happy YouTube, I'll also put a link to this here in this platform so you can just come and listen to it. I'll put that in YouTube. I'll see about trying to upload it there. But, yeah, definitely check out that thing with Mark Levin. Very important stuff. All right, campers, thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you like it. Love to get some comments on it and suggestions of what you would like to hear. And on that note, we'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.